Welcome back, everybody. Today, we're going to be diving into a topic that's,
Ripped from the headlines.
yeah, pretty much.
AI surveillance.
It's not some far off,
Sci-fi thing anymore.
it's happening right now.
It's here.
We see it everywhere, especially, cities trying to deal with rising crime.
And a lot of them are turning to AI-powered systems.
Exactly. So what's interesting about all this is this debate.
It isn't just about the tech. It's really about,
Values.
yeah, our fundamental values. Are we willing to, give up a little bit of privacy?
For safety.
Yeah, for the potential.
And more safety.
Yeah, increase safety.
Yeah, for sure. It's a question that's dividing a lot of people.
Oh, yes.
And the stakes are high.
Yeah.
I mean, you sent over a ton of articles and research.
Yeah.
And one thing is clear, there's no easy answer.
Absolutely not.
One study I was looking at suggests that AI surveillance could reduce crime by 30%.
That's huge.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
But of course, it raises some serious concerns about our privacy and how this could be misused.
For sure. And that tension is what makes this whole thing so fascinating.
Yeah.
We're going to look at both sides. So on one side, you have, the law enforcement agencies,
Right.
security experts who see AI as this really powerful tool.
To prevent crime.
Yes, crime prevention. They argue that AI can, it can analyze patterns,
Right.
detect suspicious activities, and even
Predict crimes.
yeah, predict crimes before they even happen.
And there's some evidence that it works, like that police department report that you sent.
Yes.
They started using AI-powered surveillance last year.
Uh-huh.
And they saw a 25% drop in violent crime.
That's pretty compelling for team safety.
I mean, that's a big
Yeah.
that's a big change.
It is, and some experts even suggest that it can help allocate resources more effectively.
So instead of blanket surveillance.
Right, instead of just watching everybody,
Right.
they can target, high crime areas
Ah.
and potentially reduce, racial profiling and unnecessary police presence.
Interesting. Okay, but let's not forget about the other side.
Team privacy.
The teen privacy folks.
These are the people who are really concerned about, losing our civil liberties.
Yeah.
They say that constant surveillance creates a chilling effect on free speech.
Oh, so people are afraid to speak out.
Exactly. They're afraid to express themselves or dissent because they feel like they're always being watched.
Yeah, and they raise some good points about data security and misuse. I mean, who has access to all this information?
Right.
How long is it stored for? And how do we know it's not going to be used for, other things besides security, like tracking people's movements or targeting them with ads?
All valid questions.
Yeah. Well, you sent this really interesting article about China's social credit system.
Yes.
And it uses AI to monitor people's behavior.
For everything they do.
And then it assigns them like a score
Like a citizen score.
based on their spending habits, their online activity. It's a pretty stark example of how AI can be used for social control.
It is, and for many privacy advocates, that's the slippery slope they're worried about. The idea that any surveillance system, no matter how good the intentions are,
Right.
could be exploited and turned against us.
The people it's supposed to protect.
Exactly.
So where does that leave it? I mean, you've given us so much to think about.
A lot to unpack.
This is where it gets personal. Are you leaning towards team safety or team privacy? What do you think?
It's a tough one.
Yeah, it is.
We'll have to dive a little deeper and see.
Yeah, we've got a lot more to discuss.
For sure. Yeah, it is a tough one. The line between security and privacy,
It's getting blurry.
it's getting really blurry, and it's making us think about,
The society.
yeah, the society we're creating.
Yeah, for sure. One of the things that I was reading about in one of these articles was predictive policing.
Yes.
Can you explain that a little bit more? What is that, and how does it play into all this?
So predictive policing is basically using algorithms to look at all the crime data
Uh-huh.
and try to identify patterns.
Okay.
The goal is to figure out where and when crimes are most likely to happen. And then you can, deploy resources accordingly.
So it's not about reacting to crimes. It's about trying to
Stop them before they happen.
prevent them.
Yes, crime prevention.
It sounds like something out of Minority Report.
Right, it's very similar.
Yeah.
And that's where the ethical concerns come in.
Okay.
Because critics of this argue that predictive policing can actually make existing biases worse.
In the justice system.
Yes, in the criminal justice system, because if the data that is used to train these algorithms, reflects those historical patterns of discrimination,
Yeah.
then the predictions are going to be biased as well.
So it's like if a neighborhood has been over-policed in the past, the
Exactly.
algorithm might say, oh, there's going to be more crime there.
Right. And then you send more police there, even if the crime rate has actually gone down.
It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Exactly. Vicious cycle.
And that's not fair.
No, it raises these questions about, fairness and due process. Are we okay with a system
Yeah.
that targets people based on predictions?
Not actual evidence.
Right. What if they're wrong?
Yeah, that's a good point. You also sent over this study about facial recognition technology.
Yes. Fascinating, isn't it?
It is, and kind of scary. They found that these systems are more likely to misidentify people of color.
Unfortunately, yes. That's a very disturbing finding.
Yeah, it is.
And it shows this issue of algorithmic bias in a really stark way because facial recognition is being used more and more in surveillance systems.
Right.
So if they're biased, that's a huge problem.
So we're automating discrimination.
It's a real concern, and it's not just facial recognition. Any AI system that uses biased data can perpetuate these biases.
Make it worse.
Yes, even amplify them.
So what can we do about it? Is there a way to create these AI surveillance systems
Huh.
that are effective but also ethical?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And there are people working on it.
Researchers.
Yes, researchers, developers are trying to find solutions. One approach is privacy-preserving AI.
Okay, so how does that work?
So these are systems designed to protect privacy while still allowing for security.
It sounds like you can't have both.
Right, but there are ways. One technique is called differential privacy,
Okay.
and that involves adding noise to the data.
Noise.
Yeah, so that you can protect individual identities, but you can still see the overall trends.
So like if you were looking at a crowd,
Yes,
you could blur out the faces,
exactly.
but you could still see how many people there are and you know where they're going.
You got it. And another approach is to use decentralized systems
Okay.
where the data is stored locally.
Not in some big central database.
Right. That makes it harder for hackers to get access to it.
That's smart.
Eh.
Okay, so it sounds like there are some things that we can do.
There's hope.
Yeah, there's hope for the future, but there's a lot of work to do to make sure this is used responsibly and ethically.
Absolutely. And it's a conversation that we all need to be a part of.
Yeah, not just the tech experts.
Right. We need to decide what kind of future we want.
And what role do we want AI to play? Yeah, it's a lot to think about. It's not just about picking a side.
Team safety versus team privacy.
Right, it's more nuanced than that.
It is. It's about finding that balance.
Between the values?
Yes, protecting our rights and our freedoms.
Yeah, I think one of the key takeaways here is that technology isn't neutral.
It's not. It reflects the values of the people who create it.
Yeah, if we want AI to be a force for good, then we need to think carefully about the values that we're putting into these systems.
You need to be intentional about it.
For sure. Yeah, it really does feel like we're at a crossroads.
Yeah, it is.
This tech is so powerful and it could really make our lives safer,
Yeah.
but there's this risk to our privacy and our freedoms.
And what's tricky is that there's not like a one-size-fits-all solution.
Yeah.
Different places might need different approaches.
You mentioned earlier that Europe has a strong emphasis on data privacy with regulations like GDPR.
Right.
Are there any other countries or cities that are doing things differently?
There are some interesting examples like Singapore. They have a huge network of cameras and sensors,
Really?
but they've also got safeguards in place, to protect against misuse.
Oh.
They've got clear rules about who can access the data and how long it can be kept.
Uh-huh.
And they've got independent groups that monitor the system.
To make sure nobody's abusing it?
Exactly. So they're trying to find that balance.
Between security and privacy.
Yeah.
It's a tough one.
That's,
So what about here at home?
well,
Where do you see this debate going in our own country?
It's changing fast.
Uh-huh.
People are becoming more aware of the ethics of AI surveillance.
Yeah.
And there's more pressure on lawmakers to come up with some clear regulations.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
You also sent some articles that mentioned algorithmic audits.
Yes.
What are those exactly?
So basically, it's a way to check if an algorithm is fair and accurate.
Okay.
You look at the data that was used to train it,
Mm-hmm.
you see how it makes decisions, and you test for any biases.
So it's kind of like quality control for AI.
Exactly.
I like that.
And the idea is if we make these audits mandatory,
And we can be more sure that these AI systems are being used responsibly.
right, and that they're not discriminating against certain groups of people.
That makes sense. That sounds like a good step. But ultimately,
Yeah,
this boils down to a much bigger question.
it does.
What kind of society do we want to live in?
That's the core of it. It's not just about technology. It's
Mhm.
about our values. What do we value more, a society where every move is watched and analyzed?
Right.
Or do we value individual freedom and autonomy?
Even if that means there's a bit more risk.
Exact.
It's a really tough question.
It is, and there are no easy answers.
But it's something we all need to be thinking about
What do?
and talking about.
With everyone, our friends, our
Elected officials.
yes, and the tech companies who are building these systems.
Yeah, we all have a part to play.
We do.
Well, this has been an incredibly thought-provoking deep dive.
It has.
AI surveillance is clearly a complex issue.
With big implications.
And it's only going to become more important as technology keeps advancing. If you want to learn more about this, be sure to follow at AI for the People on social media.
Great resource.
And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this journey. Until next time, stay curious and keep questioning.
Thanks for having me.